Alright, peace and wholeness. The astrology for this week, the month of July in general, is insane. And it's insane in a warlike, aggressive manner, you know. When we look throughout history, we see the same alignment we are experiencing today corresponding with certain events that were kind of harsh, escalations, and even like the wars that we are engaged in right now are a possibility, you know, stuff like that. But that's not really why I'm here. If you want that, there's many astrologers who have talked about that, in great detail about the times we're in at the moment, especially, and really it all ties down to Mars in conjunction to Uranus. Mars is the aggressor, it likes to apply pressure. Uranus is unpredictable. It's, yes, unpredictable, very explosive. It's in a sense chaos, but it's intentional and controlled chaos. So when these two planets come together, this creates like impulsive energy, unpredictable aggressiveness, explosions, things like that. But this is more so at a vast level, you feel what I'm saying? And the crazy thing about astrology is just how accurate it is. Like, you can go fact check all of this and it'll be the same information I'm relaying here. But so right now we are going through Cancer season, one of the most emotional seasons we can go through, right? Specifically where personal affairs are concerned, where affairs of our hearts, how we feel inside, emotions like things like feeling like our vulnerabilities being taken advantage of, feeling mistreated, abused, whatever. It's kind of, to an extent, a victim energy, sort of, because all the water signs are more receptive. They don't really push out like air and fire. They more receive, and contain. So, when we go into season, the season of Cancer, that occupies, or that's accompanied with a lot of domestic affairs, a lot of home life scenarios and issues, you know what I'm saying? Like this, and okay, like, it's a great time for us to sit with ourselves, sit with our emotions, reflect on where we were and where we are, in the sense of these are the set of experiences that have cultivated my state of being, my emotional state of being, looking at that, but then looking at what the results of all of those experiences and like what they cultivated today, but from an emotional perspective, this because Cancer is a very emotionally past and memory orientated sign, so there's a lot of emotions that may surface from the past, but it's like not only that, like it's just an interesting time we're going through, because at the time being, Mercury is also retrograde in the sign of Cancer, you feel what I'm saying? So it's like and not only that, Mercury is retrograde in the sign of Cancer in conjunction with Leo, and Leo, Jupiter. Mercury is in conjunction with Jupiter, but Jupiter is in Leo, early degrees. And this energy is very interesting too, because when you look at Mercury, right, we know it's our intellectual mind. You see, you want to look at the transits like this. We all have personal we all have our own personal way of processing things from an intellectual, emotional, social, um, confrontational, type of angle. But at the same time, as much as we have our own minds and our own intellectual abilities and things like that, simultaneously there are also circumstances, situations, environments, events, people that can trigger a new way of thinking, a new way of rationalizing, where it's like you're still rationalizing the way that you do by default, but now there's a layer of an intellectual property that's adding, aspecting you. It can be good, it can be bad, it can be neutral, but we go through phases where we carry our own properties and then we interact with other properties outside of us. You know what I'm saying? But yeah, so that's what Mercury represents. Though Mercury is the intellectual mind. So right now, everyone's intellectual mind, it doesn't matter air sign. Like if you have a air, Mercury, fire, water, earth, none of that matters. Right now, we're all being directed intellectually towards our inner world, our subjective experiences, our opinions, our feelings, our emotions. Our feelings and emotions, big time, we're going to think and rationalize things from a place of like, I was made to feel this way, or they made me feel this way. It's like rationality and logic kind of goes out the window, and it's more of an impulsive type of energy. And it's like with this energy, like, just be careful, and like, you're better off isolating yourself right now, what I'm saying, and unless you have someone really close that you can trust, because right now like everyone is emotionally heightened, everyone's emotionally aroused, and especially right now, simply because we have what's call it, we have we just had a full moon, in Capricorn, and this is very important. Capricorn is just not any rinky dinky sign for the moon to you know peak at, get full in, right? Wax to the maximum. Capricorn is the sign of limitations, boundaries. It's pretty much, whereas the moon is about comfort, security, feeling safe, feeling like you can. It's like, okay, the moon is the home life. Like, that's one of the best ways I can explain it. When you're home and you're comfortable and you don't care, you're just kind of yourself, right? You're transparent and you're vulnerable. But that's like the moon's energy, Capricorn is professional, it's boundaries, it's limitations, is you can do this, you can't do this and the third, so it's more restricting, and it's more like about business and boundaries, and handling business is what I'm saying. So it's also very cold, very dry, very logical and rational, right? When you think of people that are like that, more business savvy, more concerned with getting shit done, they're more cold, they're more cutthroat, and they have this emotional detachment about them, so this is something you could witness in a person that carries a Capricorn moon, you know what I'm saying? But honestly, though, I have a lot of Capricorns around me. My father is a Capricorn moon. A personal friend of mine, she has a Capricorn. She's a Capricorn moon as well. And then my ex, which I'm in a situationship with right now, is a Capricorn rising. And all and like these energies, like, look, with everything, you can process and refine it. Like, we all, in a sense, start with raw material, but it's up to us to mold and shape and cultivate that raw material. Some people stay stagnant. They don't care. Other people, like myself, we aspire to be the greatest versions of ourselves. and from a character, spiritual lens. And that's not to say I'm perfect. That's not to say I'm not human. That's not to say, as much as I aspire to act through my higher self, I also have a lower self, you know? And right now, with this moon in Cancer, I mean, the moon in Capricorn energy and like the sun in Cancer energy, right now it's like emotional, animalistic tendencies can really surface more than before. The reason why I say this is because, the moon in Capricorn, it is dysfunction. It is a hardening of the heart, but coming from a perspective of like, this is just what it is. Like, I'm handling my business. Like, I don't care. Like, it's like detaching empathy and sympathy. That's what the moon and Capricorn energy can cultivate, right? So, you know, um, the way that the transits, the planets specifically work is like this. They all are dependent of each other, right? That's why it doesn't make sense for you, one, to not know your other placements, or two, to heavily just judge a person by their sign, or live your life by your one sign. They're all dependent. But anyways, when it comes to the sun and the moon, they have this reflective energy, right? Where it's like the sun actually reflects the moon. Astronomically, we say it's the moon that's reflecting the sun's light. But astrologically, you see, the moon symbolically symbolizes our inner world, those aspects of us that we keep hidden. You know what I'm saying? It's like, it's our archetype, it's our origin, because the moon, right, physically we know it deals with home, DNA, where we come from, with like biologically, right? But spiritually, the moon is that too. It's just spiritually where you come from. So the moon is the point where your soul broadcasts. Mind you, the moon is how you process life. It's how you react and respond to life. And mind you, in esoteric science, we understand that nothing can affect the soul, only how you allow it to. Meaning your reaction matters more than what is happening in your external reality, And that impact is the soul at work. The soul doesn't only react and respond, like feel and think, but it also retains. It also retains, you see, that information. This is why we attract and we repel certain things, even from a afterlife point of view. There's many doctrines out there that teach us that what you sow in this world, you will reap in the next. And this is because everything is being contained by your soul. And your soul is using all of these life experiences so then it can expand. And the more it expands, the greater the intelligence and the know-how it has. Look, we know this because when we study, and I'm sorry, I'm kind of sidetracking, I just think it's kind of important for me to explain. We know that our soul climbs ladders, right? Jacob's ladder, right? The ladder of Jacob. But more specifically, biological ladder, because when we look in our bodies, we see many different organs, and like, not organs, not so much organs, but like systems that are dormant to us. We have certain like systems in our bodies, yes, even organs, honestly, that we don't need the use for. Like, they just went dormant. Like, we don't use them anymore. Not only that, but when you are studying the development of a baby, of a child, you witness that they go through their phases where they have like these um, um, aquatic like states, aquatic like natures, and just like it's everywhere though. It's not just aquatic, it's just a lot of different things, and you can study it, but yeah, pretty much the soul goes through experiences, and every life form is a expansion for the soul. Like, if you go from being a plant to an insect, you've expanded. Plants and insects, they're, I don't want to go too deep into this, because that's a whole other video, but yes. So realize that that's what the moon is doing. The moon, it's retaining information, reacting or responding but it's also memory, right? And it's from there that our future lives are built. And this is so spot on because the moon is the subconscious mind. We understand everything in our physical life is a result and a product of our subconscious mind. And then if you go deeper, you realize thoughts have telekinetic ability, right? They have, when I say telekinetic, our thoughts have ability to influence events, circumstances, things, people, etc. You know. So that's the moon. The moon is very important, and so the moon is doing its thing, you know. And then whatever the moon is processing, going through, it then is reflected onto the sun, you know. And if let's say like right now, right, right now we have the sun and the moon, they're in opposition with each other, meaning that right now what's going on inside, like privately, um and this can even be like, okay, at a larger scale, this would be like our domicile or like domestic life, you know. At a larger scale, it'd be like the internal logistics of like the stuff that, you know, these, I don't even want to talk about this subject though, but since I'm in it, let's finish it. You know, it'll be like the moon is like the interior logistics of what they're talking about in the Pentagon or whatever about this stupid ass war. You feel what I'm saying? And then like the sun would be like what they project. You know, these are two completely different energies. You know, and if you've been following the war, you know that like. Okay. Let me regress. I don't want to talk about the war. But pretty much though, you know, like with the sun being in Capricorn, your vulnerabilities are going to be exposed, you know. And then with the moon being in Capricorn, it's gonna be like coming and approaching sensitive subjects in a very like cold and detached type of way, where it's like what you're doing internally nevertheless goes on to project externally as an emotional mess. If that makes sense, you know. But it goes two-sided though. An emotional mess. So it's like the moon in Capricorn, these are people that are like, fuck these emotions. They're trying to use their emotions and their feelings, but it's like emotions and feelings are not meant to be used like that, you know. You're meant to just feel them and go through them and process them and stuff like that. So when you just use emotions, there's byproducts. You know, you end up with shadow selves. You know, when you repress something, especially energy that's emotional already, that energy doesn't stop being emotion. You know, that emotion, it just goes dormant, and then it may be like feeding behind the scenes. You know what I'm saying? It might be feeding behind the scenes. So it's like you go through something, right? And then like childhood, for example, you went through a domestic experience in your childhood, and then one day you repress it, and then one day it just comes out, boom, and no one's seen it coming, etc. But anyways, though, you know, that's why it's not good to repress emotions. But anyways, though, you know, with like this energy, it's like, just mind you, you may think you're handling business internally by maybe being cold or cutthroat or manipulative and just caring about yourself and focusing on your own self-interest, like, but the reality of it is you probably look like a total emotional wreck. You know what I'm saying? Like with this energy. The upside though is just like anyone who's been working diligently to plant and sow seeds of discipline, structure, foundations towards their own personal safety, like their home life, uh, to making sure that they're taking care of themselves, making sure that they have a home. Like people that are working that Capricorn energy, you know, and they're being stable and structured, then what's going to happen for them is they're going to go through an experience where it's like, they're going to go to an experience where it's like, they're going to be in a space where they'll be able to project more emotional maturity and security. And they'll be in a space where they can where people will be able to see them take care of themselves, but also others. You feel what I'm saying? So it's kind of a double-edged sword where it's like, on one end, we have all these people that have these distorted, weird emotions that are typically channeled, charged with anger, because Capricorn isn't angry. It is an angry sign, you feel what I'm saying? But it's more like fear and selfish orientated anger, you feel what I'm saying? So these people, these bitter people, whatever it may be, you feel what I'm saying? Like, that's the one side. Right now, they'll go through an experience where they'll be like forced to look at all of like their emotional condition, whether that's their home life, their relationships, like their familial life especially, or their own internal state of being, you know what I'm saying? So it's one way or the other. You're either reaping the emotional rewards of the work that you put in, or you're being teared down by the lack of internal foundations you've been building for yourself, and like with Mars conjunct Uranus right now in Gemini, it's like very important that we have some form of internal foundation and structure, because it's going to be explosiveness in the areas of communication, in the areas of our immediate associates, and stuff like that, so it's like unpredictable, random, unjustified bursts of anger or whatever, you know what I'm saying? And it's like having that internal foundation, because the thing about energy is people are born with Capricorn moons. As an astrologer, I'm not gonna sit there and tell you, oh, I'm sorry, you're screwed, you're done for, like, just wrap it up, you have a Capricorn moon. No, I'm gonna work with you, I'm gonna lay a path down for you to follow in hopes, but it's really a science though, so there's really no hope. It's more like in faith that you will go from dysfunction and trauma to a space where you've refined and purified those traumatic experiences and turned what was once a weakness to your strengths. You feel what I'm saying? And you've worked out the dysfunction within you, you know what I'm saying? That came from the way that you were raised as a child, your upbringing and everything like that, because we're dealing with the Capricorn moon. So, I would even help a Capricorn moon understand that you've gone through these life experiences, where you've felt abandoned, you felt you can't be taken, like you can't trust people and stuff like that, because you're meant to become that for yourself. You're meant to become your mother. You're meant to become the one that picks you up and like doesn't abandon, the opposite of abandoning, that takes care of you. You're supposed to do and become all of these things for yourself. So you're supposed to become mother, as a person with a Capricorn moon. And this is the balancing counterpart, the balancing energy, you know what I'm saying? And then like if I was to go into even deeper layers, I would explain that anytime you're dealing with Saturn energy, Capricorn, right, you want to balance it out primarily with Venetian energy, right? And this is where you can start playing around with Taurus, Libra, and Pisces energy, right? Because Taurus, Libra, and Pisces are all associated in a harmonious way to Venus. I say all that to say that I just hope you guys are safe out there, like ensure that you're taking care of your emotions and ensure that you're keeping yourself safe. Realize that right now, we're all facing boundaries, and it can be like boundaries you personally set for yourself with others, right? Or it can be you are coming to realize the boundaries that are being enforced upon you. You know, whether it's circumstance, relationship wise, health wise, whatever. This full moon is all about boundaries. You know, setting boundaries to protect yourself emotionally. But if you don't have if the seeds weren't sowed, then this full moon is going to expose that. It's gonna let you know you don't have boundaries. People could just walk over you. Who gives a fuck? You know, type energy. But like as you guys can see, like all these scratches on my face, you know, the full moon happened in the person who did this to me's first house. Right? So they're really going through their own personal shit, you know? But here's my thing though. Here is my thing. And it's just fascinating to be aware of astrology and keep up your awareness of astrology, you know? Like just be consistent with it. Because these energies are these energies at the end of the day. And if you want to lock in with an astrologer who can help you understand what the week holds, what the month holds, what the day might hold, because you know some days are more special than others, you know, then you found him. You know, I'm that astrologer who can help you read the stars for your own personal benefit. You guys have a beautiful, blessed day. Thank you for tuning in. I hope everyone is having a, you know, enjoying themselves, things like that. Peace.